First of all, good morning, everyone. And I truly want to thank everybody that participates, that comes onto our webinars. We put in a lot of time and effort, and it's really for the community. It's for the community association members, the property managers, the board members. My name's Mark Buckwalter. I'm a member of CARG, or Community Association Resource Group. And usually on a monthly basis, we go ahead and we have an informative webinar, whether it's from one of our members or even sometimes out of the group that's interesting to the community association um, arena. Um, just as far as COG goes, and I'm going to keep this very brief so we can get into the elevated discussions. We have a consortium of probably about a dozen people of all different disciplines. I handle monthly accounting for condominium associations. We have Ken Vasquez, that you can see right now. He's with Popular Bank. He's the one that gives out free money. Well, maybe not free money, but he gives out money. Let's put it this way.
We like
Uh,
giving money out. Yes.
and we don't have Marcy on, but Marcy is with Community Cable Consultants. It's a unique business that she has. She basically advises and consults for cable and internet. The beauty of it is that there's really no cost to the association. The different cable companies actually pay her for the service, and she'll coordinate everything from better equipment, better services, sometimes upfront money even. Then obviously we have Maori Elevator, which I'll turn over to Tim and to Andrew in a few minutes. We have a new member, basically, it's Diamond Gate Supply. They handle gating and just an all-around nice guy to deal with. Gates are, again, getting a lot more popular. He does the service and also the installation. We have Tyler with Valley Insurance, which is always a hot topic, especially over the last few years as everything has gone up. But uh, Tyler has valuable resources to a lot of different underwriters, and actually, insurance seems to be coming down, luckily, this coming year. We have Craig from Professional Builders. Craig's been one of the founders of CARG. He's been around for a long time. He's one of the most legitimate uh, janitorial and light maintenance type of companies, and just an all-around good guy to deal with. Charles is also the founder of CARG. He does GRC landscaping. Um, Jeff, everybody met. He's with Support Depot. Then we also have for paving and seal coating, we have DMI. We have a pest control company and also doing consulting basically on tree trimming and so on. That's Darren. Yeah, I think he's in the car right now with Forever Gone Pest Control. We have a pool company called Hickson Pool that does repair and also new builds. And then we have Pallet Roofing for roofing, any of the roofing needs really. I think that really covers almost all of us. So with that said, any questions that you may have on any of the other disciplines, if you hold that or you just put it into the Q&A, we'll answer that after the Maori Elevator webinar. And you can always reach us at CARG, C-A-R-G, the number 4, help, HELP.org. You go onto that site, you'll be able to get a link right to the individual specialty that you really want to ask us about. There's no cost or obligation to give us a call and just to chat with us, or we're always willing to help out. With that said, I'm going to turn that over to Tim with Maori Elevator. He's only been around for about 50 years. Um, And that's really a testament really to Maori, to really to any of the vendors. You know, when you're in business for that long, you have to be doing something right. I was warned not to make any jokes about up and down, so I won't. I'm going to turn that over to you, Tim, and we'll speak after the webinar is over.
Mark, I greatly appreciate the introduction, and also I greatly appreciate Carg's invitation from our elevator to come here and speak today on behalf of what we do and the entire elevator industry. Like Mark said, Maori Elevator Company was established right here in South Florida in 1976. So we're celebrating our 50th year in business. I'm 56, so I didn't start this company at 6. I am a second generation elevator contractor. This company was started by my mother and father right here in Cooper City, Florida. And over the past 50 years, we have grown to 246 employees. We're located throughout the entire state of Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. We used to manufacture the elevators right here in Davie at my office where I'm located. But in the early 80s, we transferred our manufacturing plant up to a town called Bluntstown, Florida, which since then we've relocated to Marianna, Florida. That's about an hour west of Tallahassee, up in the Panhandle. And by relocating our factory up there, we were able to expand into Jacksonville, all of Alabama and Georgia, and it's been one of our key and most important moves over the years, being able to expand into the whole southeastern United States. So Maori Elevator Company is a turnkey company. We do absolutely everything. Anything that needs to be done to an elevator, whether it's engineer, design, manufacture, install, service, renovate, beautification, or repair. We do it all, and so we've kind of found a very good niche in the elevator industry that has helped us to promote and get us to our 50-year mark, and the future looks very bright because we're in a very, very busy part of the United States as well, especially our Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach there's no three counties that are as busy as those three right there. And I don't see that changing for the entire state of Florida anytime soon. So with that being said, I'm going to get into my presentation today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let me go back. So today we're going to be going over several different topics as it relates to elevators. The importance of elevator maintenance, the new DLM code, replacing obsolete elevator equipment, and I'll go extensively into these three areas and how it relates to many areas that all of you have been exposed to or deal with on a daily basis. And then at the very end, I will open the floor to any and all questions that you may have regarding all of this. Elevators are kind of a unique, I'm sorry. Okay. Elevators are kind of a very unique piece of equipment in a building because it's the kind of thing in a building that you don't really think about, you don't really talk about until it becomes a problem, until there's something wrong with the elevator. And that's when all of a sudden the elevator becomes incredibly noticeable. So because of that, it is very important I apologize. If I have a raised hand, is that something, Mark, you would handle or I would handle?
Oh, no, don't worry about it, guys. Just keep going.
I apologize.
For anybody raising your hand, if you have a question, please type it into the Q&A module. Back to you guys.
Okay. So the elevator maintenance is very important because elevators are so important. They're such a major asset to any building, and especially in South Florida, where property value is so incredibly high. Any buildings that are being built they're going vertical, and they've been doing that for quite some time now. So, how valuable elevators are in condominiums and apartment buildings, hospitals, especially nursing homes. And you see a lot of this in South Florida. We have a lot of retired communities where you have 3, 4, 5 floors in buildings. So elevators are incredibly valuable and incredibly important to the residents and to the traffic flowing in and out of buildings every single day. Unfortunately, what we see a lot in South Florida is that when architects or engineers build buildings, everyone's having to look at costs for everything. And what you find is they tend to do in a 4 or 5 or 6-story building, many times you'll find only one elevator in the building. This is really difficult because elevators, like any other mechanical device, they will break down over time. So with that being said, the elevator maintenance is incredibly important because you need to make sure you reduce the number of shutdowns, the problems you have with your elevators. You want your elevators to be incredibly efficient. And then we'll also get into it a little bit later on. There's also a liability factor because the general public is using these elevators. We spend money on maintenance on a copy machine in any office environment. But a copy machine, no one rides on it. No one really gets hurt by a copy machine. So elevator maintenance is important because of the exposure that we have to the general public using them, to the fact that elderly people use them and you need them for ADA compliance. ADA, we think of ADA and we feel like it's been around for 50, 60 years. ADA came into effect in 1990 is when ADA came into effect. And where it really came into effect in the elevator industry was in 1991. So it hasn't been around for 100 years, but the Disabilities Act, the Americans Disability Act, as it relates to elevators, is very important. And that's why you have to have a minimum of one elevator in a building. So the maintenance is incredibly important. Proper maintenance ensures the safety and the reliability, and it's also going to control your costs. Examples of that is this. If you have an elevator that is not being properly maintained, you're going to have reliability issues. You're going to have shutdowns. You can even have, and there's been documented cases where improper maintenance led to passengers being struck by the doors, trapped in the elevator. So you have safety issues that also relate to that as well. So the maintenance has got to be done, proper preventive maintenance on a regular basis. And then if the elevator is being properly maintained, that means the equipment is operating in the manner in which it was designed. So what does that mean? It means you're going to get maximum life out of that elevator. If you have an elevator making a loud noise, a door scraping as it opens and closes, if no one adjusts that door and makes that scraping stop, that scraping means there's pieces of equipment that are grinding down and eventually they're going to fail. So you have a shorter lifespan of that equipment. You have more liability issues and reliability issues, which are going to cause headaches for everyone in a building, the management company, the property manager, and all of that. Preventive maintenance versus reactive maintenance. So we find many times, and Maui Elevator services elevators that are we've installed and turned over 1 year ago, and we service elevators that are 50 years old. There's a huge array of different type elevators we service, and we don't even service just Maui elevators. We also service all other brands, makes, and models. So when we're dealing with older equipment, even though it still is running, there is a time where the elevator lifespan is getting to the end. And so what we work with our customers to do is provide them an estimated remaining lifespan. So if we picked up an elevator on service that's in a building that's 30 years old, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to evaluate the equipment and we're going to let the customer know these parts of the elevator are in good shape, these are not. And we also submit to them a proposal so they can start preparing financially for upgrades to an elevator that they definitely need to do. Reasons why elevators, their lifespans are shortened isn't just isolated to improper maintenance. We also have use. We have elevators that are on Fort Lauderdale Beach that the elevators are outside and they are absolutely attacked by the salt air, by the elements, driving rain or horizontal rain that gets doors and elevators all wet. All these things will affect the elevator's lifespan if the maintenance isn't done to help fight that. The other thing is improper use, misuse, abuse of elevators. We tend to see a lot of doors being knocked off tracks in hotels because people use those luggage carts and they tend to ram the door and hit the doors or knock them off the tracks. And this is an exposure that hotels cannot avoid. But it's the type of thing when performing maintenance, we know these are areas we'll have to focus more on. When we meet with customers and we discuss with them elevator components and parts that they need to start focusing on doing some upgrades on. What we really stress with our customer is we're talking to you about this not at the 9th hour. We're talking to you about this when the elevator is running, when the elevator is still in operation. What we were trying to get them to avoid is when the elevator fails and it's at a point where we can no longer keep it in service. That's a problem. What customers tend to not think of is if they wait until that happens, then they immediately sign that proposal we sent them. We have to order the equipment. You're talking probably 2 or 3 weeks for the equipment to come in. Then you're talking the better part of a week for us to install equipment, depending on how extensive of equipment that we're installing. All of this time from when that elevator went down, that elevator is down there, they tend to be taking a beating from their customers, from their tenants, residents of a building. So we always tell customers, if we're telling you this needs to be done and we're giving you time to get the funds together to do it, then you want to order the equipment and us take it out of service, have the installation take that week, and then put it right back in service. We're trying to avoid an elevator being down for months at end because they just were not prepared to do that. We also tell customers, have reserves in your budget for elevators. Even if your elevator is new, a reserve together for elevators so that when the time comes, you've been able to comfortably add reserve money in there on a regular basis to where you're not having to scramble and maybe take out a high interest loan or something because you're kind of behind the 8 ball. So we really stress the being preventive and proactive regarding this. Like I said, it reduces the downtime and extends the equipment life. We don't want to get into the increased costs and the disruptions to the building. Maintenance and best practices. When Maori Elevator went into the elevator industry, and what we have seen over the past 50 years that we've been working in this industry is elevator manufacturers such as ourselves, other manufacturers where sometimes we have to use equipment that is not Maori Elevator equipment due to the type of elevator that we're installing. They have guidelines as to how this equipment that they engineered and manufactured is to be maintained. So we follow those guidelines for the proper maintenance of the equipment on the elevator. Some parts of the elevator are maintained on a monthly basis. Some are maintained every other month. Some are maintained every 6 months, and some are maintained only once a year. But each one of those components need to be maintained per the designed recommended manufacturer standards that are set by these manufacturers. In addition, the elevator code, the national and state elevator code, also sets guidelines for certain things that they want maintained, and those tend to be areas related to the safety circuit of the elevator, the safety redundancy of the elevator, and those are the type things that you want to have checked on a regular basis. Examples of that is the is the door protection device. These are the electronic sensors that when the door closes will identify someone is in the doorway, and the door will reopen to keep the passenger from being struck by the door. Another example of this is the elevator phase 1 and phase 2 fire service. This fire service is very important, and you want it to work if there's ever a fire in the building. So we have to make sure that is checked per code on a monthly basis. The elevator emergency telephone inside the elevator, again, another item that has to be checked monthly. So this is where the elevator industry and the manufacturers who agree with the elevator code have set the time frames in which all these different components are to be serviced. Next is the risk of poor maintenance. We've kind of touched on this a little bit, but the biggest thing is entrapments, the passengers that use the elevator, incidents where illegal situations arise where someone gets hit by an elevator, and that we unfortunately live in a day and age where there's high exposure, whether you're driving a car or riding in an elevator. And so proper maintenance is going to limit these issues and these incidents of safety with the general public, which is going to absolutely drop liability scenarios for business owners, for building owners, for management companies and property managers. Code violations. Every year, elevators are required to have an annual inspection by a licensed state elevator inspector. So these when they come in and they do these inspections, buildings a lot of times have to submit that their elevator's been properly maintained, and they pass the elevator inspection before they'll quote or submit them the building insurance for the following year. So the one thing we want to try to avoid or minimize is code violations in that annual inspection or annual inspection failures. And that is done by making sure elevators are properly maintained, making sure they're inspected on a regular basis, and the elevator technician is looking out for these areas that tend to be common violations. Anyone that has a building, you want your tenants to be happy. Absolutely. Your residents to be happy. And if not, you will hear from them. And so you want your elevator to be in operation and not be shutting down on a regular basis. So where it relates to residents and hotels and things along this nature with elevators, you want your maintenance to be at a very high level so that your dissatisfaction is minimal. Where it relates to hotels, there's some hotels that if there's the people that stay at the hotel, if they're not satisfied, they have to give them a discount. So you're exposed to also loss of revenue. And this is where you want to make sure that your maintenance is at a very high standard. Expensive emergency repairs. If just like your car, if you don't change the oil in your car, you're going to go from spending $150 or $100 for an oil change to about $6,000 for a new engine. Elevators are not very different from that. You want to make sure your maintenance is maintained so that your repairs are as minimal as possible. Repair costs on elevators are expensive. There's no way around it. It's a very expensive industry. Equipment is very expensive, and these repair costs and the labor rates in the elevator industry are some of the highest in the industry. So in any industry, so you want to try to make sure that you're limiting unnecessary repairs by making sure the maintenance is done properly. The elevator code over the years, they're constantly meeting and trying to develop new areas where they need to pass new codes for the safety of elevators. This back in the day, when Maori Elevator first started our business, they didn't have telephones in elevators. They didn't have alarm bells in elevators. And over the years, they've required those things. They used to have a safety bar on the doors, meaning when the door would start to close, that bar would have to strike someone before the door would trigger to reopen. over time, they realize that even the striking of people, especially elderly people, it'll knock them down. An older person falls, it's probably a broken hip a lot of the time. So now they've gotten away from these safety bars, and now they've gone with these infrared electric eyes that are on the doors now. That way, it's just looking for someone and it doesn't have to physically strike them. So one of the most recent new code changes that came about is the new that was been introduced in Florida is the DLM, door lock monitoring device. This actually is identified in the code as A17 ASME 2020 code section 3.1012. So the purpose of this is to require elevators to ensure both the hoistway doors and the cab doors are fully closed before the elevator moves vertically up or down. Now, I tell people when we have introduced people to this new code and told them that the changes have to do to their equipment, some of them were shocked that the elevator didn't have something on this already. The elevator did have a means of identifying that the doors were closed. This is a redundancy to something that is very important for the elevator. Why is it so important for an elevator to have multiple confirmations that the doors are closed before it moves? The elevator is a machine and it is very dangerous. And if it runs with the doors open, there have been fatalities and catastrophic failures when things like that happen. So this is an example where the elevator code says our safeties on the door on the elevators now are good, but we need to ramp that up. And it took them about 5 years discussing engineering and designing before this new DLM code became into effect. And now it is the thing that's now being either retrofitted on existing older elevators, but it's required on new installations. It's required to be incorporated into the elevator controller on all new elevators. So this is all part of the A17.1 elevator code. And it reduces risk in the safety to the general public and passengers. Like I said, the DLM code requirements, these apply to new installations and existing ones. On existing elevators, many times we have upgrades that we have to do to some of the existing equipment, whether it's the controller softwares that we have to upgrade. Some of it's regarding additional wiring or circuitry that we have to wire into the existing elevator. Even some cases, the elevator cab door equipment has to be replaced because the elevator cab door equipment has to be the new style in which it has a computer on it that is communicating with the elevator controller and the door lock monitoring device, so that the elevator has this confirmation. So with that being said, sometimes we have to upgrade certain other parts of the older elevator. On all new elevators, there is no external DLM device. There is no external wiring that has to be done because all the new elevators has the DLM programming software control system incorporated into the new controller, the controller being the brain of the elevator. So all of this is part of the new design, and no new elevators can come out without having this incorporated on them. How the DLM affects existing equipment. Like I had mentioned, the older controllers sometimes do not support the DLM. And when this happens, we have to try to add additional exterior components. There are cases, and we've had with some of the real older equipment, some of the older relay logic controllers, which is the oldest that are still operating out there, is we've run into situations where we've told customers, unfortunately, there is nothing we can adapt to your elevator that will work in conjunction with your existing relay controller. And because of that, they have to do a full modernization. This requires a controller change, all the wiring being changed out, the door equipment being changed out, all the fixtures inside the car, also the fixtures out in the hall. We have assisted some older buildings that that this code they really didn't prepare for financially. And because of that, we have worked with them to kind of create a payment plan to allow this work to take place immediately, so that they can get the work done, meet the current code, not be in violation, and then give them a comfortable period of time that they can use to help pay off this much needed upgraded work that they were not prepared for. Obsolescence in the elevator industry. Obsolescence it really breaks down to when an elevator company or manufacturer, whether it's Otis or ThyssenKrupp or Schindler or Kone or Maui Elevator, these are all companies that manufacture the entire product. It's when they have made changes to their models, their type, their design, and that existing type controller that maybe had a lifespan of about 20 years that it was being manufactured, installed, is no longer being manufactured. Someone may ask, well, why do you stop manufacturing something? You do that and it's causing customers to be in a situation where they have an obsolete piece of equipment. Unfortunately, it's not up to the elevator companies. If it was up to the elevator companies, we would continue to just make the same product we've always made. But unfortunately, when the elevator code, national and state, when they come up with new codes, these existing or older controllers can no longer be changed, altered, or made to where they can operate to meet these new codes. So as there's code changes, these controllers have to be changed, redesigned, and a new type design come out. So Maui Elevator, in our 50th year of business, we are on our 7th generation of controller, and these are all forced changes that we've had to make over the years. Now, if a controller is obsolete, meaning that a manufacturer no longer manufactures it, it doesn't mean that that equipment has to be immediately replaced. It can still be maintained, it can still be repaired, and companies like, at least I can speak for Maui Elevator, we've made a point to where when we were getting near the end of one generation of controller, we kind of over manufactured a tremendous amount of components for those elevators and use those for stock to be able to use to support our under contract service customers. But we do stress this to our customers. At some point, eventually that stock is going to run out. And that's why it's incredibly important for us to be able to make sure that we communicate this to customers, let them know ahead of time you have an obsolete piece of equipment. It's not the ninth hour, but we need to start working with you to come up with a program that over the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to be upgrading this equipment, or we could be in a position where you'll lose a component and we will no longer be able to get a replacement or be able to get it back up and running. And that's what all of us are trying to avoid. Signs modernization is needed. Signs and elevator is at a point where it's starting to become unreliable, is clearly going to be with shutdowns, repeated problems, unreliability issues, elevator making odd noises, which can't be rectified, leveling issues on a regular basis, which is a really dangerous thing with an elevator because of the tripping factor. With elevators, every time that elevator door is open, you want those floors to be flush. Fixtures and controllers, like we talked about previously, that are obsolete, we can no longer get parts for. Vendors that can no longer help us to retrofit another component on the elevator to make it work. So, there's areas of, if there's an elevator inside of a building and it's located in and off of the coast, they tend to last a long time because the elevator is kind of operating inside of a climate controlled area. But when you have outdoor elevators or elevators that are there and they're on the beach or they're a hotel that take a lot of abuse, there's a lot of things there that can cause elevators to have a much shorter lifespan. And that's where, the advice from or pre-planning brought and presented by the elevator company is going to go a long way as it relates to replacing these components before they become a real problem. The benefits of a modernization, the first and foremost is the safety and operation of the elevator for the general public. Modernizations, you're replacing all the worn out equipment. I tell people that they say, well, my elevator's 30 years old, but that doesn't seem that long. And I said, well, if you relate that to an automobile, a 30-year-old elevator is an automobile that's got 300,000 miles on it. And when you explain it to someone like that, they're just like, "Wow, I didn't realize that." That is a big deal. I wouldn't drive a car that had 400,000 miles on it on a lot of long road trips because there's a good chance something's going to fail because there's so many different components and so many things that can give you problems. So the performance, reliability, and constant shutdowns, and the communication from your elevator company that is telling you what these problems are and what they're experiencing. Many times we actually like to show customers if we have a lot of corrosion we're fighting inside the hoistway, a lot of corrosion on the electrical contacts and things like this. We start painting the picture of the age of the elevator, the condition and environment that it's dealing with, the exposure. They start to be able to really get a clear picture that modernization is going to go a long way to eliminate these type things. Like we talked about earlier, that all the new modernizations, like the new installations, all come incorporated with all the new current codes, including the door lock monitoring. That is the new code that we discussed. Reducing maintenance and energy costs. It is if I have an elevator that, especially the hydraulic valve, and it sits at a floor and every 3 minutes it seeps down and then it auto levels back up. Well, that's going to do that a couple hundred times a day. When it does that, it's engaging three-phase power. That's running power. That's like it's like leaving lights on in your home and never turning them off. This is going to be a big time cost savings because new elevators are going to be more efficient. They're not going to be having repeated problems, and they're not going to be running when they shouldn't be. Thus it also reduces maintenance costs. It's very common that when Maui Elevator does a modernization with a customer, after the modernization is done, we reduce their maintenance cost because I know I'm not going there and I'm having to pour a tremendous amount of labor, effort, and focus into equipment that's 30 years old, that I'm trying to make it last a little bit longer. So all of this is going to be a savings back to the customer, and that's something that again relates hand in hand with the liability. Modernizations also increase the property value, the satisfaction of your tenants, which is always a big deal. So all of these work hand in hand with each other. Planning and budgeting. These elevators, as Jeff expressed in the very beginning, these things are expensive. There's no way around it. But what you can do, I always explain it to some people sometimes, like it's like a pothole in the road that I see way ahead. I can't avoid the pothole. I just want to be prepared when I hit it so I don't lose control of my car. And so when you're talking elevators, we try to give our customers reports to where they know this is what you need to do in 3 years. This is what you need to do in 5 years. This is what you need to do in 10 years. And we want to give them as much notice as possible. We want to prepare them for these high costs of doing these major repairs on elevators because there's no way around it. It's very expensive. In addition, when you do an elevator modernization, it's not just the elevator equipment that have to be upgraded. Because of changes to not only the elevator code, because of changes to the fire code, okay, to HO authorities having jurisdiction, they've made changes in certain areas. When you do an elevator modernization, you're going to have to upgrade some electrical in the building as it relates to the elevator, meaning the machine room. Maybe it's the pit. Maybe it's the lobbies outside each one of the elevator doors. You're going to have to upgrade sometimes fire alarm systems as it relates to the elevator. So these are areas that you do that, or you have to have a fire alarm company do, that is also additional costs. And even the older elevator machine rooms, they never required air conditioners in them. The elevator code now calls for air conditioners must be installed in elevator machine rooms. And that means if you do a modernization, an AC company has to install a window unit or a split unit for that elevator machine room, because now the code calls for not only proper temperature control in that room, but they want humidity control, because these are expensive controllers. They're computers, and they want them to be in a climate controlled space. And that's why all of these things related to elevator modernizations have to go into your planning. They have to go into your budgeting. So we try to give our customers as much notice of this so they can pre-plan for this and they can be prepared, and it will not be a hardship once the modernization is taken on. This is the very end of my presentation today. We talked about everything as it relates to maintenance, as it relates to new codes, as it relates to modernizations, planning, and things as it relates to elevators. So Maori Elevator takes great pride in educating our customers. That is what we believe in, education. If our customers know how to deal with and manage their elevators, they're the kind of customers we want to work with, because if they know what to do and you're not throwing an emergency surprise on them, they're gonna be the kind of customer that that's gonna help maintain that property the best possible way. And the elevators, that's such a great asset, is a major part of that. Thank you everyone for allowing me to make this presentation, and I am open for any questions or anything going forward.
That was great. Great job. And before I turn it back over to Mark to go over the Q&A with everybody, just want to mention, if you haven't already done so, press the chat button on your interface, not to be confused with the Q&A module. Two different things. The chat module is where we already placed the evaluation link twice. And if you haven't already pressed the chat button, you're not going to see the evaluation link. So press the chat button once now. If you haven't done that, I'll place the link in there again in about a minute or so. And after when you submit your evaluations, that's where you can also request to have the slides emailed to you, and also request to have contact from our speaker today or any of our other CARG members for services you might want to learn about or need for your community associations. With that said, for the Q&A aspect of our presentation today, I'm going to turn it back over to Mark Buckhalter. Mark, take it away.
Thank you, Jeff. I have to tell you, Tim, the building that I'm on that I'm in, for the last few days, the elevator has a sign out of service. Now, luckily, we're only a two-story office building, so it's not that big of a deal. But I think about some of my clients that may have 5 stories, 10 stories, 20 stories. We all take the elevator for granted. It's like we feel we're going to go there, press that button, and the door opens up. And it's only when it fails that we start yelling and screaming.
Mhm.
And that's really what you were bringing out, as far as maintenance, so on and so forth. It was just ironic that the last few days, and unfortunately, we don't have you servicing the elevator, so I'm going to have to talk to the building about that. But it is true. I mean, we take the elevator for granted,
Yeah.
and
It's the old adage, nobody's claustrophobic until they're stuck in an elevator.
right.
And then it's just the way it is. You don't think of these things because they're so reliable, it tends to be, but when they shut down, that's when you're absolutely correct.
Yeah, no, for sure. We have a few questions. I think most of everything really has been answered. We have one question basically from Michael, that they have 4 20-year-old Otis elevators. Does Maori support and repair that brand? And do you have maintenance agreements?
So we have maintenance agreements for all makes and models, but I will tell you There is some equipment by Otis and ThyssenKrupp, Kone, and Schindler. Those four, they're the worldwide companies. They're huge. They're all over the world. And there are some of their models that are highly proprietary. And what that means is they don't sell other elevator companies their troubleshooting tools. They don't sell them the software and things that you need to work on the elevator. So what we tell anyone is the best thing we can do is if you're interested in having us look and survey their equipment, we'll come out and do a complete survey of the equipment. We'll do a complete evaluation, and that way we can identify if this is non-proprietary version of one of those big four companies. And because the last thing we want to do is take on an elevator on maintenance that I know we're going to have our hands tied behind our back. We don't charge for these evaluations. We don't charge for these surveys. I don't charge customers for an opportunity that I might get business. That is just I've heard some people say that I called a company, they want to charge me for them to come out and look. We don't do that. So the best thing I can say, and we probably have 300 Otis elevators on service, but they're a wide array of generations of their controllers. So the best thing that we would do is them contact us and us schedule a time to survey the equipment, and then we can tell them firsthand what they've got and what we could do.
You know, it's interesting what you're talking about as far as proprietary equipment, because I always recommend to all of my clients, especially when, we're sitting down to do a budget or they have to do a special assessment for an elevator, not to go with a company that has proprietary equipment, because then you're locked in and you're stuck with that elevator company forever.
Mhm. Right.
It's crucial that, you don't have proprietary equipment, whether
Right.
that's software, like on my end with clients or with elevators or any other component. You want to have that freedom down the road to switch around to another elevator company if you're not happy with their service.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yep.
There's another question from Ralph, and I believe that you've answered a lot of it, but he's asking about with all the bad publicity over the several years with some of your competitors, how can an association ensure that they're getting the appropriate preventive maintenance for their elevators? That's number one. Are there internal Maori checks and balances with maintenance work done by your techs? Um, and also, how often should preventive maintenance be done? And I know you covered some of that before, but maybe you can enlighten that.
So, getting to the first part of that, the elevator industry several years ago used to have just one piece of paper checklist in the elevator machine room, and the guy would go by and just check those boxes and all. But the elevator industry did something very smart. I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago. They started getting into a thing called a MCP, a maintenance control program. And what this is it's a document it's a booklet. It's probably 30 or more pages long. That's inside the elevator machine room. By code, it has to be kept in the elevator machine room. And the purpose of this is that it continues to we're required by code to record everything we do on that elevator, from the preventive maintenance to repairs. If we have to add oil to the system, um, uh, an inspection that takes place, the testing of the phase 1 and phase 2 fire service, all of this information is recorded in there. And when the annual inspection takes place by the state licensed elevator inspector, he checks that book to make sure that MCP is being properly maintained. So this is something that the industry has done that's gone a long way to make sure proper maintenance is being done. You also, it's important that you review your annual inspections that take place by the licensed elevator inspector. These inspectors are going to come in and they're going to write up whether elevators are being properly maintained, whether there's any violations and things along this nature. Some customers can go as far as hiring a consultant to say, I want you to come in and once a year evaluate, make sure we have proper maintenance going on. So these are different areas that customers can go to make sure their maintenance is being done. My personal opinion, one other thing a customer can do is say, I want once a year, I want to walk my elevator, I want to see the pit, car top, machine room with a supervisor from Maui Elevator Company, and we send them out there and they can see firsthand that things are being done properly. So there's several different areas and ways you can go about making sure the elevators are properly maintained. And all of those are all very successful ways. As far as elevators being maintained, Maui Elevator is a monthly maintenance type of company. The industry has some of the industry companies aren't doing that, and we don't believe in that. So, but that's the kind of thing when you enter into any agreement with an elevator company, the one of the main questions you want to ask is how often you're going to come, and I want to see what it says in the contract, and that's the time you're going to put in there. I want you guys coming monthly. If I'm paying monthly, I want monthly maintenance. Some locations, we do wheelchair lifts for certain locations. Some buildings, and they're like, you know what? I don't need monthly. It's just a wheelchair lift. It's not used very often. They decide to go quarterly. So, some of that does have a factor as far as how often in the elevators are maintained.
A question from Harry is, other than the sump pump in the elevator pit, is there any other device or method to remove water in the pit?
There's only two ways to remove water from a pit: a sump pump, which will automatically do it, but the code does require sump pumps now have to be on an oil water separator. That way, if there was oil in the pit, that water is not being pumped out to a drain with oil in it. That's going to be a EPA violation. The only other way other than the sump pump is there are companies that you can call and they'll come out and they'll pump out the pit. And if there's oil in it, they'll charge you for contaminated water, and it's a service that they offer. But that's really the only two avenues to have water taken out of a pit. Unfortunately, because we live in Florida, you don't have to dig down very far and you're going to get water. Our water table is very high, and elevator pits are 4 feet below the first floor level. That pit is 4 feet down. So unfortunately, you have to deal with water. There's a lot of water in elevator pits. There are also some companies that have come out and they've been growing very fast in the last probably 7 or 8 years in the elevator industry, and they seal pits. So they'll come out and they will absolutely seal your elevator pit to assure you don't have water intrusion coming into that pit. But that's really the whole spectrum there as it relates to water in pits.
Also, Harry has a follow-up question. How often do you inspect cables and do replacements?
So there's two types of cables. There's the electrical cable, and then there's the hoist cables or the steel cables. Those are on traction elevators. The electrical cable, those are only replaced if you start getting electrical failures, meaning that travel cable keeps bending as the elevator runs up and down. And because of that, you start getting wire breakage. That's where you would have that happen. As it relates to steel cables or hoist ropes, they call them in the elevator industry, elevators, when they're inspected annually, elevator inspectors are looking for several factors. There's a rule that we use that is that you cannot have so many wire breaks within a 1 inch span of the hoist cables, the steel cables. So that's one thing that they're going to inspect their cables annually to see if you have. The other thing they're going to look for with steel hoist ropes is rouge, or also known as rust. Inside the center of your steel cables, a lot of people don't know this, there's a rope. It's like a hemp rope that's in the center of the steel cable. The reason why that rope is in there, it's not for strength. It's when you lubricate your steel hoist ropes, that rope absorbs the oil and then it conditions your steel cables from the inside out. So if you have a lot of rouge on your steel ropes, that means your ropes are already at a point where they're starting to fail, the hemp is failing, and also they look for breaks in your steel ropes. All of these things are inspected and are part of your annual inspection when they do with the elevator inspector.
Alrighty, well, thank you for that. Karen is asking, which I know that you really can't, give this type of information until you evaluate it, but do you have a ballpark figure for modernization for cable elevators?
I can give you a ballpark for a hydro. A hydro is anything from a 2-stop to a 7-stop. Traction elevators, I can't.
Of course.
Yeah, there's so many. Just so everyone knows, a brand new hydraulic elevator will cost furnished and installed in a new construction project about $100,000. A traction steel counterweights and all that, it's 3 times the equipment, and it could be anywhere from $300 to $400,000. It's a lot more money. But when you do a modernization, you're not installing the entire elevator. You're installing just the components of. But this is, again, like service, where if you have an interest and you want to get an idea, we'll come out, evaluate it, we'll work up the entire quote, and we'll submit, here's your modernization quote by what we saw when we did the evaluation.
All right, thanks. I can attest to that because, I reach out to Andrew for my clients a lot of times to meet with them when they have elevator issues. And I have to tell you, you come out, you're on time, you give a very informative, type of um, discussion really, and a valuable, really educational information, package for people that, have elevator issues. So, I thank you for
Absolutely.
that. Let's see, we have, how long does it normally take to replace a jacking cylinder should one have to? Our elevator is 40 years old and it's working well at this time.
So the jack assembly that they're referencing here is, if everyone remembers, I'm going to show my age here. Back in the day when my mom used to take her car to the auto mechanic, they would drive over this thing and that shiny pipe would pick your car up. That's pneumatic. A hydraulic elevator is the same as that, but it's hydraulic. It's not air. So that means that pipe, if you have a 5-story building, that piston, that pipe is down in the ground 5 stories deep. It's very, very long. So how long does it take to replace if it's a 2 landing elevator, you can do a cylinder replacement in about 4 days. We can Maui elevator, we can manufacture a cylinder replacement in about 8 days, because we do all that with raw materials that we keep in stock at our factory. If you go a 5-story, the problem is the deeper you go, the more you run into hole collapse. The more you run into when you pull the cylinder out of the ground, you could have the water come up through the hole. Now you got a water issue you have to address while you're trying to take the old cylinder out, put the new one in. So it's a little harder to give you an estimate how long it takes to change a deeper one. But if you don't have major problems with the hole, cave in, water, usually they can be done within a 1 or 2 week, whether it's a 2-stop or a 5-stop.
All righty. Then John is asking a question. What's the difference between a rope grippers from hoist cables or ropes?
Okay, ropes or the steel cables that actually support the weight of a traction elevator, that's just what holds the car up, and it's connected to the car where the people ride in, and the other side is connected to counterweights. So if you have a 4,000-pound capacity elevator, you've got about $7,000, 7,000 pounds of capacity counterweights, because it's not just the capacity of the car, 4,000 pounds, but it's also the weight of the car. So those are the ropes that do that. The rope gripper, this was also a code change. This was about 15 years ago, maybe longer, where when an elevator got to a floor, a traction elevator, sometimes the elevator would drift, and it would drift in the up direction. Meaning if I got into a 4,000-pound capacity elevator and I'm the only one in the elevator, that means the counterweight side is a lot heavier because the car's not full. So what happens is sometimes elevators, when you got to the floor, it would start drifting up because there's so much weight on the other side. The rope gripper is when the elevator gets to the floor, it bites onto the ropes and it holds the elevator firm at that floor. It's like a brake. It's setting the parking brake, if you will. When the elevator gets to the floor, the rope gripper engages. It holds the car there firm until the people get off and the doors close. That's what a rope gripper is in relation to the ropes.
All righty. Douglas has a question about his 26-year-old three-story building that has 6 units, two on the ground floor. I think, Douglas, you really should reach out to Maori because this is really more of an evaluation that he would probably have to come to see. And then John has one. This is the last question. What's the life expectancy of hemp ropes?
Um, it depends how they determine that, and this is the rope manufacturer has come up with this is every time an elevator runs in the up or down direction. So imagine you have these ropes. This is connected to the car and this is connected to the counterweights. The ropes go all the way up the hoistway and then they go over the sheave, which is the motor. That's the part that spins, and then it goes down. So that means those ropes make a complete bend, right? 180-degree bend as it's bending over that sheave. Those you can probably get 8, maybe 10 years out of that because every time it goes, that rope is bending. That rope is bending. There are also other type elevators that are underslung, meaning the cables go up, they go over a sheave, they go down, they go under the car, under another sheave, and that means the ropes go bend about 8 different times before it gets to the counterweights. Those you might have issues at 4 or 5 years because it all relates to how many times the rope bends, and that's the lifespan. It's like your tires. Your tire life depends a lot with the mileage. Ropes are the same thing. So if you get a building that it doesn't run, it's not really as busy as another big, taller building, the ropes should last a lot longer because they're not bending as much in any given 8-hour day.
Terrific. Tim, thanks so much for obviously this informative and crucial for every building that has elevators. It's a big expenditure. I know that, when I'm doing budgets, this is one of the line items in the reserves and even in the operating budget, for maintenance items that we're constantly talking about. It was a wealth of knowledge. So I really appreciate that. Um, we have a few people from the group. We have GRC Landscaping. We have Ken from Popular Bank, Darren from Forever Gone Pest Control, myself as your monthly accountant. If anyone has any questions, we can stay on for another few more minutes. I know we're at the top of the hour, but we're here if you want to reach out for a quick question right now, or obviously you can reach us directly to discuss any particular question or need that you may have.
Mark, I have
Yes.
have a couple of regulars on here that text me on the side, and Jackie is asking, does professional building services and GRC landscaping, do you guys provide services in the Brevard County area?
All right. Yes, I see that.
Sorry, we don't go up that far.
Yeah, okay, so
Okay.
that's Craig from Professional Builders.
And Charles, he'll reply Charles, can you hear us?
Charles, you have to go ahead and take it off of mute.
Charles, do you provide services up in Brevard County?
That is north of Palm Beach County. Where's Brevard?
I would say that's
I
the
don't
answer to
know.
the question right there.
Okay, well, Charles answered that question.
I don't even know where Brevard County is. Sorry.
And then we don't have Diamond Gate on here today, but so Jackie, just put that into the evaluation and we'll make sure that he sees it.
Right.
I have a
Ken,
question for
what, I'm sorry to interrupt. Ken, while we're there, I'm sure you can obviously handle Brevard. You're on mute. Ken, you're
Ken
on
from
mute.
Popular.
Yep,
Hello?
there you go.
Yes,
Yeah,
Mark, what was that?
yeah. Does I know Popular is across the country, so obviously if somebody has
Yes.
a need in Brevard County. I know that wasn't part of the question, but obviously you can help them out with loans.
For financing, we do cover the whole state of Florida. I myself probably won't cover that territory, but we do have a colleague that covers that area.
Right,
Absolutely.
Sounds great.
right.
Yes.
All right, good.
And
And as
just
far
a question I have. Go ahead.
and as far as with myself, accounting, almost everything is electronic. So, we've been expanding not just to the Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. We go a lot further up or to the West Coast. So, for any monthly accounting needs, obviously we can help you out. Go ahead, Jeff. Whoop, he just walked away
I just
for a
had a
second.
question for Tim and Andrew, and really anybody here, anybody who's on the call from CARG. Um, Hypothetically, if you don't serve a particular area, you can still act as a consultant to keep their current vendor honest or to
Absolutely.
make sure that your contract has what it's supposed to have. So can you address that, Tim and Andrew? I'm assuming that maybe somebody has an elevator contractor away from your service area that they're happy with, or
Yeah, a
even in
good,
your service area that they're happy with, but like
right.
I used to do a lot when I was a cam on the field, I would have another expert in the industry as my consultant to be sure things are getting done in a timely and proper fashion. Can you do that as well?
So here's a great example of that. CubeSmart. You know, the CubeSmart storage places, they're all over the United States. We service all the CubeSmarts in Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. But unfortunately, we don't go. And I've got several contacts at their corporate office, and they're like, Tim, I just got this crazy quote. It's in Las Vegas. Can I
Right.
send this? Yeah, send it to me. And I will tell him, you know what? That is what that part costs. It is a major repair. In my opinion, they're being fair with you, or no, that's 3 times what it costs. You need to tell them, hey, that's not a fair number in the industry. It's not what the going rate is. So yeah, we do that all the time because we do have a lot of customers that are not just in the 3 states we're in. They got buildings here and they got buildings in Connecticut and everything. So yeah, we
Right.
absolutely do offer that.
That's
You,
fantastic.
Jeff, and that's really a great point because that's really what CARG or what we're all about is really the education. Obviously, if we can pick up a client, that's a plus, but we're here for the education for property managers and for board members. So, a lot of times, somebody will come in and, we'll talk to them about taking over the monthly accounting. But I always end off by saying, even if you don't choose us, keep my cell number. You can always reach out. We can always talk. There's no cost or obligation. And hopefully just to steer you in the right direction. And I know all the other members are like that. So, feel free to reach out to us, even if you're happy with your vendor, but you have a question, you just want to keep things in check, please reach out to us.
Right.
Let me just see if there's anything else here very quickly.
There was something about redundancy, break redundancy. Discuss break redundancy, please.
Break redundancy. You have safeties on a hydraulic elevator. You don't have safeties. They're not required because of the way a hydraulic elevator is designed. It does have a pressure test done every year, so you have a safety bulkhead on the bottom of the cylinder. So there's built-in ways where a hydraulic elevator can protect itself from a free fall situation. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but it means there's things already incorporated into that design. With a traction elevator, your safety is multiple things. You do have brakes on a traction elevator. If an elevator were to just go out of control, then you have, once it exceeds its contracted speed, these safeties would engage they would bite onto the rails and they would stop the elevator. The other thing is the thing I already discussed, which was brought up, which was the rope gripper. Yet again, another thing that helps to control the elevator from moving when it's not intended to move. As it relates to the safeties on the elevators, they do work in both directions, up and down. Most people would think, well, I don't care about up, I care about falling down. What people don't know is traction elevators, there's a greater chance in a failure of the system for you to free fall up than it is to free fall down. And again, the reason for that is most of the time you're not in the elevator full to capacity. You're in there with you and a couple other people, meaning the counterweights are heavier. So if there was a major issue and a failure of the system and that car started to free move in either direction, it's going to take off in the up direction. And that's where you do have these safeties that will trigger when the car exceeds its contract speed.
So we shouldn't jump up and down when we see that situation going on.
If you jump up and down in a traction elevator, you actually will set the safeties. And then you're stuck in there until the fire department comes to get you out. So yeah,
Terrific.
no jumping in elevators.
All right, very good. All righty. With that said, I want to thank everybody that participated. And if you have any questions, like I say, go on to our website. That's cog4help.org. And we'll try to assist or give you some information or education. Once again, thanks again. Stay tuned for the next webinar that we'll probably be having in the month of January, just because December we have the holidays. And but we're always around to give us a call. Ken, thanks for staying on from Popular Bank. Darren is on. Charles just had to sign off. Valley Insurance was on for a while, so we appreciate that. And we'll see you at the next webinar.